Welcome to Alpha Marketing, your go-to resource for unlocking the full potential of your small to medium-sized business. Hosted by Aaron Shishilla, CEO of Wolfpack Advising. Now, let's learn how to dominate your market.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Marketing Alpha podcast. Today's guest is Eric Bassett, co-owner and VP of Sales and Marketing at Natura Pest Control. He's an industry consultant and an associate certified entomologist. With over 18 years in the pest control industry, Eric has scaled Natura into a multi-million-dollar operation with a strong emphasis on customer experience, team development, and sustainable growth. He's also known for his expertise in door-to-door sales, digital marketing, like me, and leadership coaching. So with that introduction, Eric, welcome to the podcast. How's it going?
Aaron, thank you so much. That introduction was nice. It was almost too nice. I feel like you have made me sound more qualified than I truly am. So thank you.
You did the same thing for me when I was on that podcast. So I had to scratch your back too. Did I nail the names?
You did nail the names. Nice work. That's a great job.
Took me a little bit of practice. Anyway, Eric, tell the crowd like your background story, what you're doing now. Obviously, you've done some amazing things in that little short introduction I gave, but give a little bit of background and kind of why we're here today.
Yeah, 18 years in the pest control industry is kind of crazy to think about. I graduated high school, hopped on a plane, flew to Bakersfield, California, and sold pest control door to door in the middle of the summer. I don't recommend it. It was horribly hot. I don't think it got below 90 degrees at night, and it was 115 degrees every day. The worst. But that was my first experience in pest control, and I told myself never again. At the end of that season, I'm like, dude, pest control sucks. I'm never doing this again. I came, I saw, I conquered. I'm out of here. And Jake, who's my business partner now, my brother-in-law, was like, dude, you should come and knock with me in this local pest control company in Idaho. And I was like, yeah, I guess I might as well just go for it. So we knocked at that company for a couple of years. He ended up leaving to go start Natura Pest Control in the Pacific Northwest. And I actually stayed with that local company for a few years. In 2016, they were purchased by Rentokil, which now, as we know, is the biggest pest control company in the world. And I actually hung out with the Rentokil team regionally and led inside sales teams and coached and developed those teams for about a year before I reached back out to Jake and Jana at Natura. And I was like, hey, are you guys big enough for me to join the club? And they're like, yeah. So I joined as their director of sales first. And there was a business partner of theirs who wanted to make an exit. And I was like, all right, here's my chance. So I sold some real estate, helped facilitate financially the buyout of that partner, and joined the ownership team. That was in 2019. And I think I also got my ACE that year, which was a cool achievement. And then since then, I've been a podcast host. I've jumped into industry consulting, big networking groups, live events. I've done kind of all sorts of stuff, including Pest World, which you obviously know about a lot of the events. You've been to some of these things too. It's just been a wild ride, dude. It's been a lot of fun.
What you're saying is you know your stuff here, and you're a good sales guy. You don't like it, but you do it, and you love it.
Yeah, and I try to do the best with what I can where I'm at. I'll put it that way.
So what's your secret? I mean, how do I become a master of sales like you?
Oh, dude, you're so good at making me feel great, Aaron. I appreciate this. This is fantastic.
That's a sales strategy of mine, by the way. That's buttering him up.
You guys hear this right now? Aaron's asking me how to become the master of sales while using master of sales techniques already. What's funny about this whole thing is it's crazy the amount of stuff that you can accomplish when you kind of lock in your mission and vision and values for yourself personally and what you want to do. And you just give yourself some time and have some patience. I never thought that I would accomplish everything that I have accomplished by now. And I'm still trying to kind of pace myself a little bit because I've got, a wife, and we have a little 18-month-old that's wild and crazy. And I've got a 13-year-old son too. So I'm trying to balance my goals in business with my goals as a father, as a husband, and some other things that I do, physical health and working out and gym time and all these other things. But if you have kind of a focus and a passion on what you want to deliver to the world, you can accomplish crazy amounts of things.
So what does that actually look like? Because I know, myself included, and I was a big like naysayer and all that stuff, where it's like, oh, write out your core values, your mission, your vision statement. And I was kind of like, this is just a bunch of BS. Like, just tell me the secret sauce into how like I become a millionaire. So,
Yeah, right. Like, can you just like write it out for me? Like, what does that
yeah.
actually mean? I think the first thing, there's a question that I ask myself a lot, which is, what are you here for? Like, why are you here? Like, what's your purpose? And a lot of times I ask people that question and they don't really know exactly what to say. And so I'll ask it in a different way, which is, what do you feel the most fulfillment doing? Like, not necessarily financially, but if you could spend your time kind of doing anything, what would you do? Or what do you feel called to do? What kind of scenario pulls you in and like doesn't let you go? And for me, it's serving people. I at the very core of what I believe in, I think I'm put on this earth to be of service for people. And I was reading The Go-Giver, which is one of my favorite books. And there's one of the laws about wealth in that book that basically says the amount of money that you can make, like your wealth, is directly tied to how many you serve and how well you serve them, right? And so I'm thinking, okay, I would love to be financially well off. I think everybody would be. But my pathway to getting there all has to do with how many people I can serve and how well I can serve them. And lucky enough for me, I get a lot of fulfillment doing that. And so, like, in the pest control world, there are tons of people who need some type of encouragement, some type of help, some type of guidance. I was one of those guys, years ago, and there weren't a lot of resources around. Nobody really liked to talk about what their special sauce was, their special seasoning, their proprietary information, all that stuff. And I always wanted to create some type of consulting company, some type of networking group, some type of informational opportunity for people where the industry as a whole could kind of develop and become better together. And it took a while to do that. Since then, now I've been part of Facebook groups and podcasts and all sorts of things where we've done all those things. And as an industry consultant, I get the benefit of getting paid to do exactly what I like, which is answering questions and helping people grow and build and scale. So I think it's important to understand what your purpose is, what you really want to gain from life. And once you know what that is, then you can start to put that into action. Like, okay, well, if I want to serve people, how do I want to do it? Where do I want to do it? What information do I need in order to do that properly? What experience do I have to have in order to be confident enough to get that squared away? I never thought that pest control was going to be like my long-term career. It just so happens that pest control fits my purpose, which is to serve other people. That's a really long version answer to your question, but I think that's it.
So when you started in sales, like, did you have that same purpose and you thought that is what served you well and like doing well at sales? Because you obviously performed really well. What would you attribute that to?
Yeah, for me, a lot of guys that went out to sell door to door or sell over the phone or really sell anything, the biggest roadblock that people have is not sales technique or learning how to sell. I think it's their core belief about sales. If the person who's in that position thinks, I'm selling this thing to someone who doesn't need it, or like, I don't see the benefit of what I'm selling, they're going to struggle really, really hard. You shouldn't bother wasting your time selling something you don't believe in because you're not going to do a very good job, right? And it destroys your self-image if you have to force yourself to do that anyway. For me, I always truly believed that I was doing somebody a service by selling them a product that they needed. And I thought, my goal isn't to convince you that you need this thing. My goal is to get to know you, to ask you questions, and to fully understand the service and product that I'm selling and see where the overlap is between what you want and what you need and what I'm offering. And if I can find that overlap, my next job is to show you where that overlap is and then make sure that the price tag that we have associated with it matches, right?
That is so true.
So it's one of those things that when I teach sales teams now, we'll talk about the value that the customer sees in the service. And dude, so many sales teams will tell me that they have pricing objections. They're like, oh man, the customer just doesn't want to pay this price tag, or the price is too high, or the customer's wife said that it was too expensive or whatever. And I'll tell them, you can't battle with price. You have to battle with value. If you get to the price tag part of it and that person is telling you that the price is too high, what they're saying is, based on what's important to me, there's not enough value here for me to make a buying decision. Right? And so it's just kind of a cool art form almost when you learn how to sell well.
Yeah, I can't. I think you said that very eloquently, and a lot of people struggle to maybe put that in words or treat sales like these secret sales tactics, or how many doors you need to knock on or how many phone calls you need to make. But when you have that conviction of, no, I know these people need this and I know how beneficial it is, it's your job to ask them questions and then, exactly as you mentioned, show them. I would say from my perspective, and I can talk real quick on this, is like doing sales for Wolfpack. A lot of people would say, I got compliments in terms of how I'd sell something, and they'd say, you're like, the way that you said that was so beautiful, because it was just like a sales tactic without even like thinking about it, because I had the true conviction, and I'm sure like just going into that, it aligns directly into how you're talking about pest control. I think a lot of people could take that message back to, hey, do your salespeople or whoever's doing sales have true conviction in the service and true conviction in the company that it's needed and wanted? Because if they don't, maybe that person isn't the right person.
Yeah, and they might be maybe be the right person to be on the bus. They're just in the wrong seat, And it's funny, a lot of people call these, sales tactics. That's like the classic term of it, right? Like, oh, what's your favorite close? How do you overcome this objection? What's your favorite tactic for this? And I kind of like to think of them as sales principles, right? Because I like to think of timeless principles, things that are always true no matter what kind of position you put them in. And it's not about, again, convincing the customer to buy it. It's about trying to find the overlap of value there. How can I make sure that this is the right product for you? And sometimes I see guys that kind of do like a reverse psychology kind of way of it. Like they're actually trying to make sure that the customer is a good fit for them. And I'm like, okay, you're halfway there, but you're still using it as a tactic, right? Like develop that into a principle. And what you're trying to do is make sure that this is the right fit for both of you. There were a lot of guys in door to door, and you see this classically with cancellation rates in door to door. They'll go through a neighborhood. They're a really good sales guy. They're very persuasive, right? And they're good looking and they're charismatic. And so they sell a lot of accounts. They put a lot of accounts on the schedule. A lot of accounts fall off. They never go through because they're high pressure, but they do end up closing and servicing a lot of accounts. We're talking 600 to 1,000 accounts, high performers. And those accounts still, you struggle with 30 to 40% attrition over the next year, which is just so painful. And considering what door-to-door sales cost, having to deal with that increased cost as a PCO to pay out those commissions and then have those accounts turn out and canceled is just ultra painful. Yeah. So I've always tried to tell sales teams and PCOs too, hey, it's way more about quality than it is quantity. And trying to tell a door-to-door sales guy that, they kind of blow you off because they're like, well, my pay scale is about quantity. So like, I would like to be incentivized by what you're saying, but that's really what I have to deal with. And we actually started doing pay-as-you-go commission plans that helped incentivize the sales guy to keep those accounts on for longer periods of time. We wanted to align the goals of the sales guy and the goals of the pest control company. And the best way we can do that is you get paid when your customer makes their payments. And as soon as your customer stops making payments, you stop getting paid.
Like an account manager.
Exactly.
Okay, so how did you segue then from this traditional door-to-door sales to, you have some digital marketing in your background. How did that transition happen? What does that look like now for you?
The digital marketing side was kind of a cool one because when I went from door-to-door sales to inside sales, I was selling, knocking doors in the summer, and I was actually coaching and teaching sales teams at a DirecTV call center. And the owner of the pest control company that I was working for at the time called me, and he was like, "Hey, there's this cool new thing we want to try. It's all digital marketing through Google. Like it's no longer the yellow and white pages, but it's this cool new thing. And you're the only guy that we know that understands call centers, sales, and pest control. And we want you to run this inside sales team for us." And I was like, "That sounds great, dude." And I jumped in, and it was kind of my first experience with trying to understand Google. Like, okay, what the heck is pay per click, and how do I square away these AdWords, and what is this? What the heck is SEO, and all this other stuff? And I worked really closely with the other counterpart, which was kind of handling the actual technical aspects of it. And we sat down together and we're trying to figure out, okay, where do we want to be by when? How much do we have to spend? What kind of investment do we have to make to get the right kind of leads in the door? How many leads should we expect? And we started building out projection tables and all sorts of stuff. And it made me realize that there is a really close relationship that should be had between sales teams and marketing companies. And one things that I really like about you and Wolfpack is that not every marketing company understands that relationship very well. They're like, "Hey, I'll bring the lead in the door and then I'm hands off. I don't care about whatever happens to it." And you guys actually do, which is really refreshing from a marketing standpoint. But that was kind of my transition. And then when I continued on over to Natura, they had a marketing company in place, and I kind of jumped in and kind of became the liaison for that guy, kind of holding them accountable. Hey, how much are we spending? What kind of leads are we getting? Where are these leads coming from? What's our overall cost per qualified lead? And then on the backside, I was also looking at all the sales metrics. What's our closing rate? What's our conversion rate? What's our average contract value? All those other things that are going to tell me if my team is actually performing. So it's kind of two sides of the same coin. You got the marketing side on one end and the sales side on the other. And I never want to hold the marketing company accountable for what the sales team does. And I never want to give too much credit to the sales team for what the marketing team does.
What you're talking about, I think, is like one of the biggest issues that companies face. They hire a digital marketing agency, or they start running ads on their own. And I went through it too years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, when we were just starting it into Google Ads. You run Google Ads, but you don't have the systems and policies or procedures in place in order to capitalize on the leads that you're receiving. Or you don't even, like, let's say you're receiving leads, but as you mentioned, there's a huge disconnect in determining, like, giving the marketing agency or whoever is running those ads the feedback it needs to optimize further to continue getting well or really good leads for the sales team. And also what you're referring to here that I think is huge in all of this home service space, not just pest control, but a lot of these companies grow from family operated businesses that have no experience in sales and what it's like for somebody to call on the phone that doesn't know them and trust them already. What we're talking about is people that are calling, and this is an inbound lead, but this is an inbound sales call. So for those people that are running Google Ads, maybe for the first time, or maybe it's their 20th time trying to do Google Ads, and every time it's not successful, maybe their return on investment is like that average of 200%. So for every dollar they put in, they get $2 out. But where the real money is made is having a really high converting inbound sales team. What would you say to these companies that are maybe trying to do this and struggling?
The first thing that I see when it comes to companies that are struggling with an inside sales team is the evaluation side of it. I'll get on a consulting call and I'll start asking them about their marketing and asking them about their sales performance. And they'll usually give me something general, like, "Yeah, we close pretty well." And I'll say, "Okay, what is your closing rate?" And they're like, "I'm not really sure." And I'm like, "Well, do you track it?" And they're like, "No, but it seems like it's this much, right? It seems like it's 50% or 60% or whatever." And I'm like, "Okay, perfect. First thing we're going to do is we're going to start tracking it, like really tracking it, right? Because if I can't really tell you whether you're doing good or bad unless I have clear, clean, consistent data. And I got that data over a long period of time, right? So we usually spend a little bit of time implementing. I've got some spreadsheets that I built out that I have most of my consulting companies use. That tells me the closing percentage, tells me what they convert to a recurring business versus what they convert to like a one-time service. Tells me their average contract values, their average recurring values, their auto bill pay percentages, their retention percentages, cancellation percentages. The list goes on, right? And ultimately, at the end of a month, we look at the performance of that team and we can clearly see, okay, are we actually doing what we need to be doing? One of the coolest things that we started using as a tool is our revenue per lead, right? So based on your closing, your conversion, and your contract values, you can put it into a little formula that I made that will basically tell you how much revenue per lead projected based on those metrics, right? You can also get the same number if you just divide your total sales revenue by the number of leads you get. But the projection version of it's a formula. And every time I have a marketing call with, a marketing partner like you guys, we'll talk about that revenue per lead number. They'll say, hey, how much money do you want to generate, right? And I'll say, I want to generate this much revenue. And if I want to figure out how many leads I need to get, that means I need to know that revenue per lead number, which tells me the number of leads. Then the marketing partner knows confidently, okay, Eric's looking for this number of leads. How much are we paying per lead right now on average? It's X amount of dollars per lead. Okay, do we feel confident in making a commitment to that? Yes, great. Perfect. I know how many leads I need. I know how much I'm going to spend per lead. That gives us our marketing budget, right? Mm-hmm. So on the marketing side of things, you guys kind of commit to a little bit of a loose idea of the spend, right? That spend's variable. We know that. It's going to go up and down over the course of the year, depending on demand and other things. But the marketing company can kind of commit to that. But on the sales side, I have all those metrics aligned so that when things go well and we're hitting our revenue goals, I can give credit where credit's due, right? I like to separate the evaluation side of things from sales and marketing for that reason. So it's kind of, again, a long way to answer your question. When people are struggling, the first thing I do is try to evaluate. Where are we really struggling at? Are we tracking the data? Do we have clean data?
Mm-hmm. What I've seen from two people is like they're in that first scenario of like they're not tracking it at all, right? And I've also heard from a lot of people, though, that they are tracking it, but then they tell me that their close rate's 80%. And I'm like, there's no way. There's no way.
Yeah, dude. What's funny is like sometimes I'll look at a sales team and like I'll listen to some of their calls and I'll see that they're closing like mid-70s and I'm like, okay, I might be able to see that. That's possible, right? If your average is in the 80s, I'm like, dude, you guys are disqualifying leads you should not be disqualifying, right? Like you're factoring things out that shouldn't be factored out. Another thing that we did that was really important is we created a call quality scorecard, which we have a inside sales training that we go through that all of our inside sales team does. This is something else that I always recommend for the clients. And it basically teaches your inside sales team all the necessary steps, all the components that need to be part of a sales call. And it also kind of has a natural flow like a typical conversation does, right? Mm-hmm. And if you have a system that you're teaching, you can also create an evaluation card for that system. And so we make sure that the inside sales managers or the GM or whoever is kind of over that sales team is listening to calls on a regular basis, and they are scoring those calls based on how well they actually follow the initial training that we do, right? Mm-hmm. And you'll see that there is a correlation between calls that are scored really well from a quality standpoint and things like closing rate, conversion rate, average high contract values, right? Because all this stuff in the call quality scorecard is lead measures. They are things that you have full control over, right? So one of the components in the call quality scorecard isn't, did you close the deal? Because you don't have full control over whether or not you close a deal, right? But one of the components is, hey, if an objection came, did you make like an actual effort to overcome the objection, and was it an appropriate way to do it, right? Mm-hmm. So if a person says, hey, yeah, I'll have to talk to my husband about this, he's the decision maker, and I say, okay, like that sounds good, like when would be a good time for us to call you back? Okay, you're not overcoming that objection, right? That's not the way to do it. But if that same question comes up, hey, I need to talk to my husband about this, and you say, hey, I totally understand where you're coming from. I'm married. My spouse would want to know what's going on too. What's most important to your husband when it comes to making a decision about a pest control company? And then the wife goes, well, he'd probably want to make sure that we're getting a really good deal. And you say, hey, totally get that. I would want to feel the same thing. What do you feel like your husband would think is a good deal? Right? And now we have this whole conversation going that actually battles that objection and allows me to reclose the deal, right? Mm-hmm. So those types of behaviors is what we're trying to track. So I guess step one is we got to be able to evaluate. We have to be able to look at the actual metrics and the data and see what we're struggling with. But step two is we can't just look at the results. We can't just look at closing, conversion, average contract value, whatever. We also have to look at the behaviors behind those things. So long story short, if I see that a team has really good call quality scores and I trust the evaluator, like I know that the evaluator knows exactly what to look for, and that team, there's a member of the team who's also closing at 80%, I'm like, okay, I believe it. Like based on your call quality scores, that number makes sense. But if I see someone who has really crappy call quality scores and you're closing at 70, 80%, I'm like, you're lying. It's not how that works.
I feel like you've spoken on so much, and you could spend like an hour just talking around that particular subject with all that data. And I think it's so important for these companies to like start looking into that, even if it's just the start of it, because I talk with so many all the time that aren't doing anything. I mean, the minimum that they have is maybe a close rate, but it's the bare minimum, and they say their close rate's 80%. But when we're talking about an 80% close rate, like as you mentioned, we need to redefine that a little bit more, or look into the metrics some more. So segueing over, you obviously have a lot of experience in door-to-door sales and a lot of experience in your digital marketing channels and managing that with sales teams. What do you also go into or attribute to your success with effective team building and training and development programs with everything else that we kind of talked about?
Yeah. So a little while ago, I like flows. I'm a flow guy. So, and I'm also a whiteboard dude. If you give me a chance, I'll like go to whiteboard and I just write out flows of all sorts of things. Yeah, I'm just all over the place. But one of the things that I illustrated a while ago was kind of this flow for employee development. And you kind of have to imagine it kind of like a circle, like a clockwise circle that has movement with arrows that are moving clockwise. And you split it up into these 4 quadrants. And in the upper right-hand side, you have the first step of any kind of business owner who wants to build and grow and scale their company. You got to hire the right people, right? So first thing, you have to look into all your different processes when it comes to hiring good candidates. Who are you looking for? What kind of skills do they have? How am I going to put a compelling offer together to actually find the right people? How am I going to budget for this person? All those different things, right? The next step is training. Once I hire the right person, what does my training program look like? Do I have an effective training program? Is it just me shoving them in a truck with another one of their employees and saying, hey, just pay attention and learn what this guy does?
Yes.
Right? Yeah, that's what it usually looks like. Do I actually have a checklist, a training checklist? Do I have a competency checklist? Do I have, both classroom training and on-the-job training and teaching them about the philosophies of the business? Am I really giving this person all the tools that they need to really hit the ground running and be successful here? So we've got obviously the hiring aspect, the training aspect. The next one is development, which is really easy to say and kind of difficult to wrap your mind around if you're not super into this. So once a week, we sit down with our employees, or we have their supervisors sit down with their team members. And it's a real quick conversation, maybe 10 to 15 minutes. And they say, hey, how are you? Right? Like, how are you doing personally? What's going on in your life? Right? Like, how is this particular person outside of you just being an employee? Personally, how are you? They have that conversation for a couple minutes. Next thing they ask is, hey, what do you feel like is going well in your job, in your position? Where are you killing it? What's going right? They have that conversation. Then they ask the question, what could be improved? What do you want to improve on, right? And then the final question, what is your action plan to improve on that thing? And as the developer, as the person who's actually coordinating that meeting, you get to go in and make sure that that action plan has lead measures attached to it. So for that sales guy, if he says, hey, what's going really well is that I'm converting a lot of customers to recurring business. And you say, yeah, man, you are. That's great. Great job. What's your area of opportunity? And he says, well, my closing rate is really suffering. And what's your action plan? And he says, I'm going to close more customers. Sorry, pal, that's not an action plan, right? The action plan, though, could be, hey, I'm really struggling with this particular objection, right? When a customer gives me this objection, I'm going to ask one of these two questions depending on what the objection is, and I'm going to be as consistent as possible, and I want to do that on at least 75% of my sales calls. Boom, that's an action plan, right? And then the question I like to ask at the end is, what can I do to help you hit this action plan, right? And then the following week, when I follow up with that person, part of the conversation is, hey, how are you? What's going well? Did you do that commitment? And if so, did it go well? Like, did it have the intended effect, right? So we're doing these regular developments and regular evaluations every single week. And that's what kind of helps develop this continuous culture of improvement. So that's step 3, right? It's a big step, but it's right there in step 3. And then the final thing is delegating. You have to be looking for ways that you can delegate things from a leadership level down to a frontline colleague level, because that's the way that they're going to get a taste for what it might be like to be a leader in your organization, right? So I have to find somebody who could be a good candidate for that role. And I might say, hey, I need to run this report. Do you want to look at this report with me, and I can actually show you some of the inner workings of this department? And they might say, yeah, that sounds great. And I say, perfect. We look at the report together. I delegate that task to them. I evaluate them on how well they do that task. I teach and coach and train them, and then see how they do it. And if things work out well, the next thing I'm likely to do is to hire that person for a new role, right? And the cycle continues. I'm hiring, I'm training, I'm developing, I'm delegating, right? And so one single employee that comes in the business from the ground level as a technician, as a CSR, as whatever, might go through that process a handful of times until they find themselves as a VP, right? Or a GM, or whatever that situation is. And by the time they get there, they've been hired, they've been trained, they've been developed, and they've been delegated, 2 or 3 times, right? But ultimately, that type of flow is something that I think is really effective for small business owners, just business owners in general, because everybody wants to build and scale and grow their companies, but they have a tough time understanding the exact way to do it. And so if I could give anybody any advice, it's, hey, hire, train, develop, delegate. If you follow that process, you'll get there.
That makes it in like a very like concise way to like visualize what it looks like. Rather than kind of drinking from the fire hose. It's more of like, I don't know. I'm my way of going about things. Thank goodness for my wife and the other people on the Wolfpack team, because they make sense of my crazy. But I'm more like that shotgun approach. And my wife, her background is elementary school teaching, so she knows how to simplify things for sure and make it into that. Eric, it sounds like you should go and should go into elementary school teaching, because you might be really effective or good at it.
I would love to do that, dude. Like teaching
Really?
and educating, I think, is one of the most fulfilling things. I feel like it helps like scratch an itch that feels like I am contributing to something that is kind of infinite, right? When you know something yourself and you don't share it with anybody, the best that it can do is benefit you for as long as you're here, right? But if you take what you know and you start teaching it to other people and they teach it to other people, that can benefit those people and their families and their networks indefinitely. So I would love to, I will continue to teach and educate as long as I can.
And not talking on the same topic, unless you want to talk on the same topic. What's next for you? Like, what do you want to do? I mean, you're hugely successful. It seems like you have, I don't know, like door-to-door sales, digital marketing, all of that. You're continuously working to help your pest control company. What's next for you? What do you want to focus on?
I think there's a really unique space in the pest control industry right now for capable and experienced consultants. There's always been kind of consultants in this space that kind of are just general business, but they're not necessarily specialized in pest control. Mm-hmm. And I think I like to spend the majority of my time helping pest control owners operate in the best way that they can to create the best companies to actually hit their potential, and have some of the coaching opportunities that I didn't have when I was young in my role in pest control.
Mm-hmm. For those people that are listening to this and maybe they're growing their pest control company, or even if it's another home service company, because this podcast is geared towards, really anybody that is growing their particular business. What is something that you might want to leave them off with, if anything, or something you commonly see through all these different cases that you consult with?
The biggest thing is that you just need to be patient. Understand your purpose, be patient, and be persistent. A little bit done every single day consistently will have a huge impact over time, right? I spend a lot of time at the gym. I like to work out. That's one of my things. And it makes it for a really good metaphor. If you go into the gym once every 2 weeks and you just kill yourself, right? You just obliterate a workout, right? You'll be sore for the next week and a half or whatever. And you think that you're making progress, right? But all you're really doing is just damage to your own body. If you go in and do a fraction of that workout every single day for those 2 weeks, it'll be a lot more sustainable and you'll get far better results, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're running a home service business and you're small right now, that's okay. Focus in on what little thing you think will make the biggest difference, the biggest impact if you focus on it and be consistent, and then hit on that thing every single day, every single week, every single month. And by the end of a year, you will be significantly in a better place than you were when you started. So be persistent, be patient, and just be focused.
I wanted to add some other stuff, but I think that's a beautiful way.
Thank you for listening to Alpha Marketing. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe,
Eric,
leave a review,
and
so
share it
with other business owners and marketers.
Awesome
Your
stuff
support
you shared.
enables us to
And,
continue bringing
if
you
anybody wants to check
actionable
us out
advice
on
and the
podcast,
tools you
do
need
that.
to
Leave us a
thrive.
like.
Join us next time for more insights with Aaron Shishilla, and keep striving to be the alpha in your market.